Hello, everyone. I am Judah Bernard with The Rise Creating Your Voice. I am the wisdom dialoguer and the motivational warrior. And we have a special guest right here, which is Steve Opalenik. Steve is a licensed mental health counselor who specializes in working with people who are seeking to make a change in their health. He has a background in personal training and utilizes his experience with mindfulness, meditation, playful movement, and calisthenics to create action plans for those seeking to find maximize fuel and in their inner potential. Steve is a certified Y12SR instructor, which is yoga as a 12-step recovery program, and a certified PCC instructor, which is a progressive calisthenics certification, and also CMHIMP, which is a certified mental health integrative medicine provider. He is the founder and the president of Promethean Project, a Massachusetts-based wellness nonprofit organization. It is my honor as well as my pleasure to introduce Steve. Go, Steve. Go, Steve.
Hey, hey, Judah. How are you really doing?
How am I really doing? I am doing well. I've been blessed this morning to give the message. One of the messages from my minister word today was to you have to remove to move to be unmovable. So that's how I'm really doing is teaching people how to move, to be unmovable. So that's how I'm really doing. And I like how you opened up with our topic is how are you really doing? Sometimes people have um, hardships with telling people how they're really doing, especially in hard times like this during the pandemic. How are you really doing? So, Steve, I'm gonna ask you, how are you really doing?
I'm doing good. Uh, got to help my brother move some stuff today. Slow cooking some ribs right now, smoking some ribs as we're speaking,
Wow.
and feeling pretty good. Got to do some reading, some light stretching this morning. Looking to go into the holiday season in a good spirit. So
So, thank you. One of the things I want to ask you, I know you in the Massachusetts area, are you doing telehealth program for some people that might want to use you as a mental health therapist?
yeah, I'm only doing telehealth right now just to keep it safe and buttoned up, uh, which has been it's had its kinks because it's been hard to figure out at first, but now that we're in month 9 or 10 of this whole thing, it's worked out pretty well, and actually I've loved it because I've gotten to see people throughout the whole state, people in Boston, people um, in Eastern Massachusetts. I'm based out here in Western Massachusetts. And so it's been kind of cool to not be tied down to just proximity and being able to see people and have people outreach to me from many different cities and towns that maybe I would never see before.
And I like what I read because I think most people don't know that sometimes with mindfulness and meditation, and you know what, let's step back a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's give a little history about Steve. Let's do that first because I want people to understand who Steve is and what Steve is about. All the way in Massachusetts, which I love Massachusetts, so be looking out. I'm coming to visit. So
Nice. Yeah, let me know. Um, so I'm a huge geek. If I was in my office right now, you'd probably be able to see it. I have a Captain America shield that I made for Halloween one year. And
Mhm.
so I grew up kind of being geeky, being bullied a little bit, having
Right.
a lot of anxiety and depression. Uh, Probably through middle school and high school, I developed what we call an emotional overeating disorder, meaning
Mm.
that when I became anxious or depressed, I would eat. And so I'd eat normally, usually in front of people, and then I would grab food and kind of hide it and
Oh,
maybe
wow.
eat some pizza in the basement. Or for snack, I would have like a baguette of bread, half a baguette of bread with Thousand Island dipping sauce just for a snack.
Mm.
uh, delicious, but also way too much for me to kind of consume. And that it was really about control for me. Is I didn't feel in control of my emotions, so I took control through how I ate. And then somewhere in high school, college, I realized what was going on for me, and I switched it up, and was able to realize that my control really wasn't in picking the food and how much, but it became more about how I'm going to honor those emotions and manage the root causes of that anxiety and that depression, and really do the work to honor them and move forward and not feel like I had to use food to self-medicate. In college, I went to UMass Amherst for psychology as an undergrad, and then I went to Springfield College for my master's in mental health counseling and marriage and family therapy. And then I've been counseling ever since. I've been doing counseling in many different phases over the last 11 years. I've counseled in schools, hospitals, in people's homes, but right now we're counseling out of our own offices and doing the telehealth stuff.
I like how you have that plethora of mental health background. I want to hone on the marriage and family counseling.
Mm.
If you can, what are some of the known reasons people come in for marriage or family counseling?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is lack of communication, effective
Oh wow,
communication. I think that's one of the big. There's a bunch of different things, but that the underlying theme I see is people not knowing how to communicate, people not knowing how to show emotion or talk about things or show love or affection, not only how the other person in the relationship needs that to be, but also how we really expect that to be too, because there are many different ways that we show love and affection. And if my way of being shown love is not the way my wife shows love,
right.
then inherently there's a disconnect there. And if we don't talk about it, resentment builds. And once resentment enters the relationship, that's usually when people come in to see me, because that's a relationship killer. You can do work to minimize it, but if it goes unchecked, it usually leads to a negative response.
And one thing, Steve, that I've talked about in a lot of my podcasts is that communication piece is important. And the
Mhm.
one thing is getting to know who you're with. Most of
Right.
us don't get a chance to actually know who we're with. Some of us don't even know what their communication language is. Some of us don't even know what their love language is.
Exactly.
And we just get into this. We throw this handmade ready relationship and we throw it on the wall and think it's gonna stick.
Yeah, I blame the Hallmark Channel.
Or TLC.
TLC, something like that. No, I don't
Or
really blame
what
them.
was the thing? Four weddings or something like that, or 90 Day Fiance.
Yeah, something like that. My mom watches a lot of Hallmark, and there's merit to those Christmas movies of falling in love. But sometimes when I work with young kids or people in a relationship and we're talking about that same thing, not knowing that person, a lot of times we leave it up to fate, because that's what TVs and movies have us believe. But you have to do some of that work. You have to be introspective. You have to understand who it is you're dating to really understand how that relationship works. So I always joke around that it's not like the Hallmark movie that one day someone's going to knock on your door and it's going to be that person you have to interview with, from the CEO from the company you're interviewing for the newspaper, and you're going to fall madly in love and have a merry Christmas or a happy holiday with that person. But I think you're right. A lot of people do get in relationships without really understanding who that person is, or don't know until uh, a life event happens, and then they're like, whoa, this is not who I thought that person is. And then you're a couple years down the road.
And not only do they, a couple of years down the road, but I found in many situations that then children are born.
Mm-hmm.
Then it becomes what's the word I want to say? A stuck value. Because we have children, we need to stay together.
Right. Yeah.
Other things, whether it's finances or whatever. But because like I told you before, that I was a therapist too as well, and then doing counseling with, marriage and family too as well. it was quite amazing that I saw a lot of people got married because of a situation,
Yeah.
and it wasn't love.
Yeah.
So I want to horn in because I know you do work with children too as well. And the one thing is I want to put a small disclaimer in there that I have to sit up and come to the screen on this. Please, people, stop watching TV and making it into your relationship. TV is fake. That is a scripted role that actors and actresses play. That is not your life. Your life is what you live inside your house.
It's true.
Okay, that's it. I just wanted to put that disclaimer out.
No, I appreciate that. It's true. I think it needs to be out there.
Because people become very inactive, even in reality TV shows. Let me tell them about the reality TV shows. They are scripted. There's no reality if you don't see the reality. There's no reality, people. So let me be honest with you. Reality TV is scripted. There is no possible way that you would just have people in your house and you know, they take out parts and edits and stuff. It's scripted. That's not reality TV. Let's just keep it real.
It's true. And the camera is an entity in those things, and you can't help but be aware of it being there. So you're interacting as if you're interacting with another person. So it's always on your mind. So even if they're not written out scripted, the behaviors are often skewed because of that extra character being in the frame.
And I know that you do a lot of physical, a personal training too as well. So how do you coordinate or merge or marry that into the mental health spectrum?
Yeah, I mean, so it's something that where the Promethean Project came in was that I felt doing mental health counseling, we were missing a lot of things because we're still focused on emotion and talk therapy, which is really important. But there are so many different things physically that go on in our body that affect our mood and our emotions, and vice versa. Our emotions affect our physicality as well. And I know that happened for me with my overeating. At my worst, I was about 230 pounds because I had let that fester for so long. And so every time my anxiety spiked, I would eat more, and then that would create more distress in my mood because I would feel guilty and shame for eating so much. And so, marrying many different aspects, integrative wise, like looking at nutrition and sleep and habits and routine and exercise and teaching different types of exercise and breath and meditation and mindfulness and all these things came about because I feel like there was a lot of gaps between services that were happening, and integrating them what wasn't really happening that well. And so, the personal training came in a period of my life. I always liked exercise once I took control back from the food. And so I thought about, oh, what if I just do that on the side? Or, I was burnt out where I was working at the time. And so I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll just do personal training instead. And then doing the work, my own experiences and reading more, I started looking into how can I marry them together and do the work I love doing with less burnout and make it fun and enjoyable and give people concrete steps that they can take home and work on those things. And so that's where in personal training evolved. That's where the yoga training kind of came in, the calisthenics training, because if you don't have access to a gym, as we're seeing now, a lot of people don't know how to go forward with it. And a lot of people I work with, I just tell them, you got a body, you can do this stuff without a gym. You can do it in like a 4x4 square if you need to, or 3x3 square. You can make it work depending on how you're going to put it together. And so by doing some of those mind body connected exercises through yoga, calisthenics, bodyweight stuff, I feel like there's ways to regulate your nervous system and thus regulate your moods and your emotions by being inclusive.
And the one thing I want you to explain to the listeners, because I know a lot of listeners that may be dealing with anxiety, depression, and things like that, I want you to expound more on the take back control of your eating.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they grasp that.
Yeah, it's a really tricky thing. And when you think about anxiety, a lot of anxiety is all feeling that, I mean, there's many nuances to it, right? But a lot of it is feeling like you're not in control of a situation.
Right.
Public speaking, studying for a test, job interviews, just going into a social gathering where you feel uncomfortable, you don't feel like you're in control. And for me, the eating came from that feeling. And so I decided somewhere subconsciously or maybe consciously at the time that, okay, that's one thing no one can take away from me. I can
Right.
choose how much I eat. I can choose what I eat. And so I'm going to use that to balance out this lack of choice or control in terms of aspects of anxiety or depression. And so when I talk about taking control back away from eating, it's more about the fact that, yeah, that's control, the eating aspect, but it's a fake control, because what it initially did was made me feel good because I had, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to choose this. And then I'd feel a lot, like I said, a lot of guilt and shame. And it actually deepened my anxiety and depression because of that cycle of, oh, I'll eat 10 slices of pizza, but then I'm going to feel terrible because I'm overweight. I don't feel confident. I don't have self-esteem, and it's going to perpetuate this. And so taking that control back is really looking at the situation and saying, okay, where's this coming from? Like I said, what's the root cause? How do I honor that? And what do I do in that moment that's going to help me? So really, by doing that, you're choosing to take control in a way where you feel like you don't have control. It's a weird concept, but when you look deep into it, doing that introspective work, even though it's hard and uncomfortable, you're actually taking control over the emotional response. And I think that's the most beneficial way to kind of work with this stuff.
Another thing that I just heard you say is taking control of your emotional self.
Mm.
What does that look like in layman's terms for someone that's trying to take control of their emotional self?
Well, it's hard for each person's an individual. We're all complex and different, but I think it really is, instead of turning away from your emotions, it's embracing your emotions and trying to understand where they're coming from. So meaning, my emotional self tends to not want to deal with what a lot of people call negative emotions, like anxiety, anger, depression, and wants to only focus on the positive emotions of calmness, connection, and happiness or joy. And that's not a bad concept, except that, life is an emotional spectrum. We go through all these things because there's a reason. It's kind of like pain. When you think about pain, we want to avoid pain. But what
Right.
is the root cause of pain? It's a message to tell us something's messed up and we
Mm-hmm.
need to pay attention. We need to be aware. We can't just try to wish it away. We have to understand what the disconnect there. And emotions are a lot like that too. They're just messages that are being sent to us for some reason. Now, that could be a neurochemical imbalance with our neurochemicals. It could be a situational imbalance. It could be a digestive or nutritional imbalance, or it could just be, hey, something really negative happened to me in this moment. And so that's where this is coming from. But taking control of your emotional self, like I said, is not about running away from those things. It's embracing them and really trying to figure out what that root cause is so that you can be more generative in your decision making. So I don't like talking about positive and negatives. I like
Right.
to talk about what's generative and what's limiting. And that's how I look at things.
Okay. So I know I mentioned earlier in your bio about playful movement.
Yeah.
Give us a synopsis of what playful movement is.
Um, so I've gotten some pushback when people see that in my bio, because sometimes people will contact me and they'll say, I was really unsure when I outreached to you because I didn't want to be doing playful movement. I didn't know what that meant. And the reason it's in there is that connection to yoga and calisthenics,
Yes.
but also inviting people to play with those movements. What
Right.
feels good for you, what feels different. That's why those body weight exercises are so amazing, because you can be present in the moment and play around with what works for you.
Yes.
The way I do downward dog, it may be different than someone whose hamstrings are tighter than mine, but that doesn't mean we're doing a different asana. It just means that we have to play around with what that comfort level is, and how to embrace it. And so talk about playful movement in the sense of, for adults, just getting outside and walking and your feet on the ground and playing around and skipping or doing cartwheels or whatever, just to enjoy that experience and relive some maybe nostalgic moments, but also to connect to the energy of the earth. And then for kids, it's one of the best ways for me to engage with them is if we're talking about these really heavy things, I like to get them moving. I like to process through it and connect it to some of those things. And they engage so much better than if I say, nope, sit on the couch and we're going to talk about this.
Right.
If we go outside, we teach mindfulness through different movement patterns. And then I challenge them to a race, we can have fun with it. And then, it engages in a different way.
And I like that because even in my one of my groups that I had was writing down information that they wanted to remove from their mind and things like that. And we actually went out back, and it was a geriatric group, and we actually walked around and they held it in their hand. But at the end, I had a burn trash bin where they can drop it in and actually watch it burn.
Right.
But in that, I saw people being revived and renewed from you actually having me walk around with this piece of paper in my hand or things that I want to remove. I said, but you don't know what the end is yet. I haven't taken you to the end. And that's what people hold on to. You want the end, but you battle with the thoughts in your mind of holding it.
Yeah. I think in there's so much that goes with that too, is when you look at emotional states, the physicality that you have differs, right?
Yes.
If I am angry, my posture is a little bit more defiant. My heartbeat is going faster. My breathing might be faster. I may be clenching my fists. And kids think this is funny because when we talk about letting go, a lot of times I'll have them squeeze their fist and then physically let go. And in their mind, they're thinking that's not going to do anything, but that can emotionally and physically connect in a way that can shift some of your emotional states. So looking at, okay, how do I move around the world physically when I'm in this state? And then how do I want to move, or if I want to shift states, what does that look like? And what movement patterns or activities can I do to get to that point? And so when I was talking about cartwheels or just walking with your feet in the earth, that's what I'm talking about, because you don't take that time if you're anxious. Right. You don't take that time if you're angry, because your nervous system's telling you there's a threat. And so walking and cartwheeling or log rolling or forward rolling or just playing around, walking like an alligator or gorilla, that stuff is fun, but it also helps you emotionally regulate through shifting emotional states.
And that's one thing, and I have to definitely agree with you on that, because basically, some things that I like to do is, especially when it's raining, go out and splash in a puddle of water.
It's awesome. My daughter loves it, and I can't blame her, because it is amazing. Something so small.
And especially when you have the appropriate shoes on to do it. Yeah. So I love doing that. I'm telling you, I have some not knee-high rain boots. So I don't mind going and splashing in the water.
Yeah.
But it gives me a balance back to, you know what? I'm an adult. But guess what? I'm okay playing in that water. I'm going to tell you a lot of things that people tell me when I go grocery shopping, especially if they have good music on in the grocery store. I actually stand on my buggy and just push it and get on it.
Yeah.
They were like, oh my gosh. I was like, you guys, you have lost your childhood. You can be playful still.
Yeah.
And I like how you have playful movements, and I want people to understand you are an adult, but still sometimes you have to humble yourself just enough to know that there's still a child in you.
Yeah. And like I mentioned, so sometimes when I meet with a kid for the first time, we'll play Uno or a game. And if we're connecting and having fun, and I know that they'll respond to it, we can be a little competitive, and I'll ask them, okay, whoever wins the most, do you want to dare, whoever wins gets to dare the other person to do something silly in the waiting room. And you know, I'm pretty hardcore with Uno, so I won't say I let them win, but there have been times I've eased up on Uno and to make them feel comfortable. And so usually if that happens, I'll do the worm in the waiting room while people are coming in, just to be silly, just to have fun, but also to see, hey, we can connect on a different level. It doesn't all have to be doom and gloom. It doesn't all have to be really serious situations, because I want to get to know you, and that means the whole part of you and not just what's bringing you in right now.
Right. And that's why I always say that laughter is the best medicine. Now, I do want to understand the Pro- Promethean Project.
Yeah. So the Promethean Project, like I said, came about in this sense of integrative concepts that were whirling in my mind. And so my brother does martial arts.
Okay.
He lived in Taiwan for about 6-7 years studying martial arts. My sister teaches yoga, and we all have a similar background of having anxiety and depression and dealing with it through food. And so as I was thinking about all this stuff and getting certified by NASM and doing personal training and looking into yoga concepts, I outreached to them to see if they would be interested in working together to try to create something that would be more integrative than what's out there. And so that's how the Promethean Project was born. Originally, like years and years ago, we had joked around about renting out a whole building, and I would counsel on one floor, and then my sister would train therapeutic dogs on one floor because she has a background in, you know, working at a vet. And then my brother would teach martial arts. And then when I started dabbling with this thought, it really came to fruition. And so right now we're using donated space. We have an office in Amherst, and we're putting together online Zoom activities right now for young kids. And then in the new year, we're going to start creating community forums and have panelists and guest speakers come on each month to talk about different subjects and have it be interactive to create that sense of community. So the whole concept is, all right, we want to be integrative and we want to plug holes that exist right now. So, you know, the YMCA has all these physical programs and maybe some connection to, you know, the mental wellness, but they don't actually have someone on staff to provide counseling. And so our goal is to create these partnerships with people and companies that would be our competition if we weren't nonprofit. And so really plugging these holes, we call it co-opetition, and really creating a community sense around it, because that's the most healing thing, right? Is having a strong sense of community with like-minded goals and you know, case manage each individual on their needs so that the providers involved can all collaborate and aren't giving different information to the same individual.
And that's a holistic approach.
Yeah, because that came from my experiences when I was overweight. I had a heart murmur and the doctor told me to lose weight. He never told me how to do it. He never told me how to eat healthy. He never told me the balance. So I'd go on these restrictive Atkins diets or whatever, and then crash after 2 weeks because that wasn't good enough for me. And so that's one of the things that we really wanted to do is to bring that into light and give resources to people and have a place, which we're working on building, where we can have many different integrative, holistic practitioners that people can engage with and find a path that's well for them, so they can find their inner potential and flame.
So that sounds great. I love the whole holistic approach and how you have encompassed that mental health piece, because we have a lot of people where they just go play. Okay, what's next after playing? The real problem is they got to go home back to whatever that is. I understand that they're getting free money and different things for that, but what happens when they go back home?
Right.
So I want to actually talk about the Y12SR program too, which is the yoga as a 12-step recovery program. And I can see yoga as being a 12-step recovery program in any type of recovery. Would you agree?
I would agree 100%. And that's actually that's actually what we're looking to do. So
Okay.
starting in January, we'll actually be offering online classes for the Y12 SR function, and it's up for any kind of process, not just substance use, but also behavioral. Or, think about it too. We can become addicted to our own emotions. We can become
Yes.
addicted to being depressed or being
Yes.
anxious or feeling like the world's against us, because it's intoxicating to feel validated hating someone, or saying, oh, that person was terrible to me, so I'm glad that this happened to them because of how they interacted with me. And so really, um, our approach is, when we're putting these classes together, is it's open to whoever really needs to, because the concept is, there is a step concept to it, but our focus is more about the quality of that step and what it represents, like connection or forgiveness or these different aspects, and having a diatribe about that, and then having a yoga flow after it that represents those things. And so I got into that a couple of years back. I went to a weekend training, and it was really moving to me, and it really helped me identify my own addiction to food. And so that's where a lot of that introspection came from. I had already taken the control back, but I started realizing the patterns that I had, and was more self-aware through that process.
And just, I want to put a plug in. Steve is not actually driving. He's just sitting in his
Yeah.
car.
There's no service up here. There's no Wi-Fi where I'm at right now, so I need to rely on service. And the
Let
house
me put
isn't
that
very
disclaimer out there.
yeah. So I'm not really driving. I'm just kind of relaxing in the car,
You're just
getting it
relaxing in
done.
the car. So all of our safe and seatbelt warriors, Steve is okay.
We probably should have started with that, but hopefully
I
they've made
know.
it
I
this
was like, oh
far.
my gosh. I totally forgot because we were so involved.
Yeah.
I also want to talk about your integrative medicine provider.
Yeah. Yeah. So that kind of came about, again, just tracking down leads. I feel like I'm a perpetual student and always want to approach things with a beginner's mind and always learn.
Right.
And so, we have CEUs that we have to do for our licensure, and I really try to make those as fun and interesting as possible, so that I can learn from it and utilize different concepts and challenge myself. And so a year or two ago, this came up that they were offering us a certification in doing integrative medicine practitioner, which sounds really fancy, but it really is kind of what I've been talking about, and looking into, how diet and environment
Mm-hmm.
affect mental health, but then also how we can use supplements and foods and, these different holistic approaches like yoga
Mm-hmm.
or breath to work it together. So it was about a 20-hour course, and really dive deep into the learning aspect, and utilizing, hey, okay, if someone's not ready to get medication, which is completely fine, what are some first steps we can do to help tamp down some of the anxiety, and then use that to do the work that we need to do. And so it's really cool, really looking at how processed food affects things, how gut health affects things, digestive system, things of that nature, and looking at things like dopamine or GABA or serotonin. We've all heard those, but understanding that they are built from amino acids we get from our food. And if we're not eating complete foods, or foods that are high in these amino acids, our neurochemicals are going to be off balance.
And I totally understand it from the holistic standpoint too, as well, as far as the integrative medicine too, because I think some people, and we still have to look about as cultures, and different cultures, especially Native
Yeah.
Americans, that don't necessarily use medicine that, in this that the doctors give out, but they love medicinal medicine, in which they've already provided within their tribes. One thing is, I know definitely that, that's a new and upcoming, which is integrative medicine approach, because basically, I think I posted on the other day that um, we have medicine in fruit and vegetables and things like that, but how many of us eat that?
Right.
I know I do, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying how many other people.
Well, I mean, I think you have a very valid point, because when you look at indigenous tribes and indigenous peoples, they've had these practices that have helped them survive hundreds and hundreds of years. And, you know, a lot of times have been guffawed at because, oh, you're
Yes.
going to use plants to kind of do this. And then we create chemical representations of what they've done, and it's really the same outcome, except that now we created a business out of it instead of walking the earth and saying, oh, this can heal us. And you know, I think many different cultures, when you look at Chinese medicine as well, I think that's a really important thing too, is that they've been doing that for who knows how long, and science has always kind of borrowed from it, but without giving credit. And I think, you know, I think as a society, we're starting to see more integrative things, but I
Yes.
think it's only because we haven't put the spotlight or given the voice to those cultures who've been doing it for forever.
Yes.
You know what I
Forever.
mean? It's like,
Right.
you know, as our society, it's new, but it's nothing new at all. Like, people have known this for since people have been living communally, and even before hunter gatherers too. You know, they've been doing this kind of stuff, and I think it's important to pay attention to.
Well, I know our listeners probably want to know where they can look you up at. I understand
Yeah.
you're in Massachusetts, and we understand that Steve is doing telehealth. So if you need an amazing therapist, why not
Thank
give Steve a call?
you.
So, Steve, give us some information so they might want to look you up.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, I'm on social media, obviously Facebook, but also Instagram. If you search at the Promethean Project, you can find us and follow us on there. We have a podcast. It's on every available podcasting site. It's called Break the Chains, Find Your Flame. You can kind of check us out and what we're about through that. You can outreach to info at theprometheanproject.org. Probably the best way to get a hold of us is through email, because we live such busy lives right now, and I'm always in session that it's hard to call back in between sessions, but I can
Right.
shoot an email off pretty easily. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, the Promethean Project's on Facebook, it's on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. Just search the name. There's not too many of us. There is another Steve Opalenik who is around here, but he's a little bit older than I am, and I believe he spells it with a PH instead of a V. So I'm Steve and with a V. So any of those things, check us out. Send me a message, DM me, whatever it is, and we'll respond. And always looking to connect and have the conversations and do the work.
So, are there any encouraging words or any words of wisdom that you want to leave them, or any education or type of motivation that you can leave the listeners so they can be inspired and encouraged?
Putting a lot of weight on me. um, I would say, you individually as a person, you're more powerful and strong than you know.
Mm,
And we avoid that a lot because there's a lot of uncomfort and being uncomfortable in growth. It's cliche. We hear it all the time. It's on many podcasts. Oh, to grow, you have to be uncomfortable. Doesn't mean it's not true, but
right,
I would say, you know, from my journey, there's great power and grace and holiness inside of each one of us. And in a way that's not necessarily whether you believe in God, whether you are religious, there's a holiness to connecting to self and
right.
cultivating self. And I would just say, take a look at your power, and then utilize it to cultivate yourself, and you'll see just how strong you are.
And in understanding how strong you are, understand that you are strong.
Yeah.
You are
and
strong.
and it comes from embracing yourself, and we try to avoid that so much, but if you can build up tolerance to embracing yourself, it will start to grow, and you'll be able to realize those things that we're talking about.
And if you don't know how to embrace yourself, you can go back and watch my season one, episode one, which was defining you and practicing self discipline. See, I
Or
have all of this stuff up here. I'm on episode 9 now, about to throw episode 10, December 5th. I'm giving you guys all the tools and resources. and it's
That's
for
awesome.
free. But then again, I know I can't come and see each and every one of you. But then again, that's why I'm interviewing mental health therapists. That's why I'm interviewing life coaches. That's why I'm interviewing people that can take you on to the next thing, because season 2 will be about moving forward.
Nice. Love it. I love it.
That means you've done all this, and I'm gonna give you a Christmas a holiday break so you can figure out what you want to do and define you and practice self discipline. So
Re-listen
then
and cultivate.
moving forward, we're going to teach you how to be more healthier, eating healthier, buying land, buying real estate. That's what it's about. We taking you through the moves, we taking you through the processes. And the first thing I understand that it's a process for everyone.
Right.
Everyone will not be at the same rate at the same time. Take your time, manage you. Don't manage no one else. Don't be competing with no one else. That's
Exactly.
just like I know from a fact. I don't compete with anybody. I this is what I have. This is me. That's it. I compete. I don't even compete with myself, because what God has for me, it is for me. That's it. I'm not mad at anybody. I'm not angry at anybody. That's why they call me the motivational warrior, because I motivate. I push you to be your greatest. But then again, it becomes hard when you don't want to be your greatest. It becomes challenging. That's why I got out of the motive therapist, because some people just didn't know how to be their greatest.
Right.
Or you give them tools and instructions and resources and skills to take home, and they don't do them. It's bothersome for me.
Yeah.
But then again, we still have to understand what's in our thought pattern, what's processing within us. We got to want and have the desire to motivate ourselves outside of going to therapy, outside of going to see a personal trainer, outside to doing integrative medicine.
Mm.
You have to have the desire, and I want that desire to start with you. One of my other subjects was creating yourself. I'm
Right.
telling you, I'm giving it to you step by step, but nobody wants to look at it step by step. We can look at everything from watching the fight last night. Did the fight teach you anything? No. But that's entertainment for y'all.
Yeah.
So these are free things that you can learn, that it's already out on my podcast. They're out on Instagram. They're out everywhere. But everybody want to look at everything else but actually fixing themselves. I have an issue with that.
Right.
So let's start fixing ourselves. Let's be to the moment of what works for you. And if that social media and TV works for you, go ahead. Keep sopping in your sop. I can't do anything about it. But the thing is, I want you free from your thoughts. I want you free from depression. I want you free from anxiety. And it's a process.
Yeah. I think
So,
there's a quote from one of my favorite fantasy books that's out there, and it's by this guy named Brandon Sanderson. And the quote is one of the characters talking about how he keeps going, and he talks about how the most important step on anything you can do is not the first or the last. It's always the next step, and really
right.
bringing that mindfulness to where you're at, and making these smaller steps, but not to project forward or project backwards, but to be like, what step am I on, and how do I move forward? Because that's the next step that I have to focus on.
And guess what? That was my whole sermon today, moving forward.
Exactly. Remove to move to be unmovable.
That's it. And the good thing about being unmovable, that you're staying, but you're staying because you steadfast in what you've already removed and what you're moving to, and you become unmovable because that's what you stand in. That's your
Right.
promise right there. That's your covenant with yourself. That's it.
Right.
And stay
Exactly.
right there, plateau right there in the unmovable. But guess what? In the removal, you still there to remove. Guess what? You keep adding things in that not good. Your remove going to come square, cube, and it's going to stack. where you're going to have a breakdown and you ain't going to understand how to remove anything. You're going to lose the knowledge. You're going to lose the process of removing. But you need to remove in order to move.
Exactly.
That's it.
I like it. It's a good
So,
point.
any other questions out there? I know we have some listeners and things. And if you have any questions, what's your email address just in case they want to email you? I know you said info at
The Promethean Project.org.
Can you spell that for them?
Yep. ThePrometheanProject.org. It's a long one, but
I know. And I will put it in the box so people can get the information. But then again, when I just still transfer this to the podcast. So it'll be in the podcast too as well. All that information will be in the podcast thing. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and comment. And for those who don't know, I still give out free motivational text every Wednesday. Every Wednesday, free motivational text. Only thing you have to do is text The Rise to 844-452-4110. The Rise is in all caps, and that's The Rise, one word, to 844-452-4110. If you don't know how to text that, I will walk you through the instructions and show you how to do that if you want motivational text every Wednesday.
That's great.
Some of the other things that are coming up, I already told you we're going to be talking about real estate. We're going to be talking about healthy eating. We're going to have more cooking. We're going to have more exercise. I'm telling you, 2021 is about to be big. Hopefully one of these networks pick me up soon. Sometimes you got to be in negotiations. Blah, blah, blah. That's enough said. But we just want to be thankful for the things that we have become, the things that we are going through during this time, because it gives us a thought process and being more thoughtful in the things that we do. And I do understand that, domestic violence and suicide rate has risen during these times. But we want to give you the opportunity to look at our podcast so those things will not be happening. So you can reach out to Mr. Steve. So you can reach out to some of the other people too as well that was on our podcast. I gave you a plethora of resources and people that you can reach out to, and they're doing telehealth. I'm telling you, people, you can have them in your own disposal. Where Mr. Steve alone, just gave me the whole thing of, I'm trying to get up in that holistic approach with them, because we missed the whole part somewhere where we talk about mental health and we sit on that couch like that. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Uh-huh. So we need some moving around. We need some playful moments. We need people more relaxed, because the first thing when they hear mental health, they do this. They tighten up.
Yeah.
What they want to know. The problem is, culturally, we've been told what goes on in the house stays in the house, so nobody's going to talk about it. So we want to get the avenue of getting people to start talking. So if this has touched you or released you from some of your barriers, at least reach out to someone so you can get the necessary help. And I dislike the word help. I like assistance. That means assistance makes it happen for me and you. Because if I help you, that means I'm doing all the work. So yep. Assistance meaning that you're going home and applying the necessary skills as I'm giving that to you. So assistance means that you're doing your job, I'm doing my job. Your job is to recover. My job is to direct you towards the resources and the skills so you can recover. So that's a two-part process. Any questions before we leave? Also remember that I will be doing my rundown December 5th. It won't be live, but it'll be a pre-recorded video. Season 10 will be a rundown of season 1 episodes up to season 9, just giving you highlights of what they're about so you can actually go back and watch them and actually look at it. Go step by step. I have a lot of interviews in between there about people that have had traumatic experiences. I have my father interviewed me. My mom interviewed me. I had one of my best friends interview me. So it's a lot of things I've said on there about myself. I did some domestic violence, episode on domestic violence. what's that called? Human trafficking. I did one on human trafficking too. That's what Miss Vanita Rather. But we've had so many. I've had authors, I've had people with disabilities, I had people with strokes. I'm telling you, it's been so a blessing for me. And I thank God for giving me this opportunity and this platform to deliver these type of messages right here. Now, if you have anybody that want to be interviewed, we are looking for people to be interviewed in 2021. Tell your story, tell your testimony, talk about things like Mr. Steve did. What about you? But if you don't want people to know about you, then don't come. But it's all about healing, and we can't heal if we don't hear testimonies. Some people heal through testimonies. It gives an avenue for people to open up. And the thing is, we need to open up more in what we don't do in life. We're human. Let's continue to be humankind and be kind to one another. I promise love. I promise peace. I declare peace. I declare love. I declare just motivation for everybody. Start choosing self, but in self, heal self first before you go out helping other people. Because that's what I did. I healed self first.
Right.
I had to heal me first. That's why I stopped doing therapy. And I stopped being a therapist because I had to heal me first. That was my goal, to heal me first. Any other questions, any other comments, Steve, as we close out?
No, I just want to say thank you, and I've been so honored to sit and talk with you and hold space with you, and I really, really enjoy what you're doing and putting out, so thank you for having me on.
No, thank you, and as I always say, let me tell you what I always say. You already know what I say. If you don't do nothing else, you tell a friend, tell a foe, tell your spouse, heck, tell everyone. We'll see you on the next podcast. Bye. If you would like to tell your story on The Rise or have a possible interview with The Rise Creating Your Voice podcast, email thetrjudah@outlook.com, and on the subject line, please place potential interview, and an expert will get back in touch with you as soon as possible. Looking forward to those interviews and or telling your story.